Okay, thank you, Vish, for that. Without further ado, we'll start on today's webinar. We thought we've covered a lot in the past on credit cards and direct debits and things like that. So today is a little bit about talking about other payment options that are not, I guess, the core credit cards and direct debits. So for this, I'll go through a number of different scenarios. But what I thought I'd do, of course, is point out our user guide to start with. We do have one here that's how to set up pick out and pay later options. The sort of ones that we have here are invoice me, I'm going to send by post. I'd like to do a bank transfer. I'm going to request an NEIS claim, check or check, depending on locale, and of course, paying by Pay ID. So some of the setup here, like I say, what I'm about to go through is really documented in here as well. So a couple of the key things here is the pay process. Really, we're going to be entering the details online. We'll confirm the payment and, our payment complete screen. What that will typically do is generate an email that goes to the payer because they're going to pay later. They will do their bank transfer, post in their check and things like that. And then what we do is we then mark it as all received inside of Salesforce. How do we go about doing all that? Well, first of all, we start off with our merchant facility. I'm on my demo facility. Most people can create a demo facility from, the About Payments, create samples if you don't already have one. Excuse me. What we do here is we can look at the alternate methods of payment. So I'm going to go in here. Currently, I've got credit card and invoice me. I'm going to choose, bank transfer as one example, and we do have a little bit of a session here on BPay. So what I'm going to do is enable BPay there as well. Just move that, and then I go save. Now, when you do enable new methods of payment, what it does pay to do is to go into your payment form as well, which is this payment form here that I've got as primary active. And then just click on the payment form builder and do a refresh or a full reset. And then it really brings in some of our complete pages. So under the complete pages, we'll have some more options appear when I do that, and then go save. So we go back to our merchant facility record here. You should have linked into here, your website URL. And I'll just wait for that to launch after being loaded. You're probably not interested in watching me key in detail, so I'll just use some default ones I've got keyed in today. What you'll see down here now is now we have these extra payment methods. Okay, so this whole section, if you only have credit cards, that the section won't actually appear at all. But when I have when I have these other ones added, then we'll get this option to pay. And obviously, if I click on those options, you'll see here that it kind of hides all the credit card information. Now, something to notice here is that the options that we have, so I've got credit card, invoice me, bank transfer, and BPay. When I choose monthly, some of those options disappear. So our regular frequency only shows options that are applicable to reoccurring, and to do a reoccurring bank transfer, you'd have to choose invoice me at this stage. So I'm going to choose one-off payment here. I'm going to use the amount of 20, and I'm going to select bank transfer. As you would have seen, I've entered all my details online. There's a bit of information here about what's going to happen next for the donor. I click that I'm not a robot, and I go submit. Now, what happens here is, as you would all be aware, this creates a payment transaction inside here. Now, what I'm going to, if I choose all today's transactions, we'll see a new one come in here. If I go back to our form, what you'll notice here is on the form as it's processing, it's come up with bank transfer across here, and it's also come up with some different instructions here. So what we do here for things like bank transfer is some people put their bank details on their website and say, hey, you're going to do like a bank transfer, just pay it to our our account. Great, you get the funds, but then you have trouble of knowing exactly who the person is. Was it John or Mary, or was who was it? They just put Tom. Which Tom is it on there for the reference? So what we do is we don't actually give them the bank details until they pre-register that they want to do a payment or a donation with us. And then what we do is we then show them the details on the final screen. And what I'll do is I'll show you where you can actually enter these details in a second. And we even give them a suggested transaction reference detail as well that they should be using on their statements. These details about where to pay, what they were is when we're back on the merchant facility, if I scroll down to the form, receipting, and I've got payment instructions area here. So this is the details that will be, it's also emailed to the person as well. But these are the details that are shown on that completion page. Obviously, I haven't got any real details. These are just for testing. Okay, so the person has come in. They've gone to our checkout page. They said they want to do. They're kind of pledging that they're going to do a bank transfer. We've given them our bank account details. We've given them a suggested reference to use. That reference is indexed, so if they do include it, you can just paste it in here and you'll be able to find the transaction. Alternatively, what you do here is you come into our payment transaction tab here and you choose all awaiting payment. Okay, so these are the ones here, and I've sorted by transaction date. These are the ones here that people have done online pledges, but we haven't actually marked it off. We've put these details here have been marked so that you can just press the pencil icon and put the the drawer on there if somebody sends it by check or bank and things like that. So you can use this as kind of like a quick entry screen. What you do after that is really after you save. What you do here is you come into here and just select all of those for the day that you want to mark as the payment has been received. So I'm just going to do the one, and then you come to here and you go payment received. That gives you a little confirmation screen, and then you press process. So what that will then do is it will change the status, mark it as payment received. We'll then go through our normal sort of receiving process and our deduplicating and create the opportunity and all that downstream processing that is needed. So just to recap, at a high level, what we did is we enabled the payment instructions on the merchant facility. We selected the pay later option of bank transfer. A person registered online, that created a payment transaction. They then later paid by cheque or by bank transfer or however they wanted to pay. We then marked it off. That's when we send them out a receipt. Cool. Now, what I'm going to do here is I have also got enabled here the invoice me process. Now, with the invoice me, so what I'm going to do is go back to the screen here. I'm going to do a full reset. Invoice me works in two different ways. So the first one I do, I'll just key in my details, select the address. I'm going to do, this time I'm going to choose monthly. Now you can see invoice me is actually enabled for monthly. Okay. Now the difference here is if you are using invoice me and you're doing it for one-off, the templated items outside as payment to us is delivered without doing any configuration. The process is really somebody said, I would like an invoice sent. Okay, so you are requesting that you would like an invoice sent for the amount that you're paying. For once off, so remember once off and monthly difference. So for once off, what we'll do is we are going to use our finance system. So it'll come inside Salesforce. You then let finance know that somebody wants an invoice. Finance then sends them an invoice, and then you mark it off as payment received. So similar to that process. Okay. However, for monthly, we can actually do that slightly differently. Now, what you can do is you can reconfigure the one-off to automatically generate and send an invoice. We have all the components there. It's kind of like the Lego type thing. They're all there, but they're just not set up out of the box. So you can reconfigure the monthly to actually generate the invoice outside of Salesforce and then to send it. What we find is that most people want finance to actually send it because they want it recorded in their finance system. So that's why it's done that way. But for monthly, the pre-configured way for that, again, this is going from the most common thing. So I'm choosing monthly, invoice me. I'm marking that, I'm going to put that into press submit. I'm going to go back to the payment transaction. And this time I'm going to choose today's transactions. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to mark this one as payment received for that initial invoice, so the initial invoice we need to process. What you'll notice this time, though, is once this has been processed through, and again, you can get this to automatically happen for the first one. So you've got payment transaction, I'm viewing that. You can see that's gone all the way through to maxing complete, which a lot of people are familiar with. The difference here is this one has actually created a reoccurring payment. Okay, so everybody's probably familiar with reoccurring payments for credit cards and for direct debits. What this one has here is it has a record type. It's not credit card or direct debit. It's a special record type called payment schedules. Okay, so this operates in the same, similar to how credit cards and things like that work, with a couple of variations. It obviously can't charge your card or anything like that. But what's going to happen is on the 6th of the 10th, okay, on the 6th of the 10th, this is going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to today's date. On the 6th of the 10th, that would wake up and would generate a payment transaction. So what I'm going to do is instead of waiting until the 6th of the 10th, I'm actually going to start the generation of a payment transaction. Okay, so this is really when we want to next invoice a person. Okay, so that's what we're sort of saying. So somebody signed up online, said, I'd like to be invoiced every month. Maybe it's a monthly donation, but I want you to send me out an invoice. So what we've done, we've taken the online form, we've set up a recurring payment. What will happen is when the recurring payment schedule runs, that is going to generate a payment transaction, and we'll see if that comes through. Just wait a couple of seconds. Might be a whole lot of transactions in there. So what that will do is that will generate a brand new payment transaction. Whoops, let me just go into today's transactions. That will generate a new payment transaction from the recurring payment processor, but that transaction is going to have a status of payment schedule start. In a couple of seconds' time, that may change. And what that will do is there's a email behind the scenes that will actually generate and send that person an invoice. Okay, so that's a document that we have here and the standard sort of workflow that will do that. On that invoice, they can have the option of paying how they like, bank transfer and the likes. And they can also use a credit card to make that payment as well. So there's like a pay now link. So they can pay straight away using credit card, but they just wanted to send an invoice, or they can actually transfer If they transfer, it's similar to previously, all awaiting payments status, and then mark them off as received. If they pay by credit card, that'll be marked off automatically, and away they go. Okay. So the Invoice Me is slightly different. It works with recurring payment, with regular payments. That will create a recurring payment record inside Salesforce. That will automatically generate a payment transaction and automatically send out an invoice. The once-off Invoice Me doesn't. That's through finance. Send an invoice. The person can choose to pay now, or they can using the credit card link, or they could pay by other methods. Check, bank transfer, etc. Cool. Okay, I'm just going to see if there's. Okay. What was the other thing? I think we'll go into a couple of questions towards the end. I see a couple of come through, so great. But we'll get there a little bit later. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is another popular thing that we have seen is people using wanting to use BPay. Now, with BPay, we used to include the keys for connecting to BPay and generating. So for BPay you have your biller code, and you have your customer reference number when you're paying your electricity bill or gas bill or whatever. That actual facility for doing that, you obviously need to arrange for that with your bank to actually be able to accept it, and they'll give you the biller code. But something else that you will need is to be able to generate the customer reference numbers. And you may have found that sometimes when you've tried to pay for something and you've got the digits slightly wrong, it realizes that you've got the wrong digits. That's because it's got a check digit number in it. So what we've done here is we use BPay themselves for actually generating. So BPay has a hook in there that you can do that. They include a certain number of customer generation numbers, free of charge. But what you need to do is you need to actually sign up on the BPay website, and our online documents talk about how to do that, how to complete the things. Often there's a bit of a thing where you need to go through a sandbox and testing steps. So one of the tricks that gets people here is it has a production keys begin with a username of BPP dash, and then sandbox is the ones that they ask you to check first, begin with BPPC, with the C in front of it. So when you're following this process, you need to make sure you copy the right keys. But once you have the keys get entered into the BPay section on the merchant facility. Payment. So BPay. So this is basically the username and the password that you get given from BPay. Okay. At the top of the screen, we have an environment that says Sandbox or Production. So first of all, we have to start off with Sandbox with BPay. And you see here, I've got the I've got the Sandbox details. I'm running in test. Cool. The other setup things we have here is the biller code. So this is the code for them to pay you. That would have been issued to you by the bank. And sometimes the banks will give you, there's different formulas for validating and generating of the numbers, and they'll tell you which one of those that you need to use as well. So at the top of the screen here, let me just go check to see I did enable BPay as a method of payment here. So what I'm going to do here is just do a refresh on the screen. There's, again, for everything, there's more than one way of using things. So there's two different flows that we have. So one is if you are more like invoicing somebody and you give them details for them to pay you, and then they pay through BPay. That's one scenario, so you know who the contact is already. The second scenario is more for not-for-profits. where they want to take a BPay payment, and the person kind of, you may or may not have dealt with them previously, and you want to give them a brand new customer reference number. So the second thing, where I don't actually know the person and I'm generating a customer reference number for them to use and to pay with, is the scenario that I'm using now. So again, I need to put my contact details in here. I'll select an address. I'll select an amount. I'm just doing one off. I'm going to select BPay this time. Okay, and it's got some notes about here what's going to happen, and I'm going to press submit. Okay, so this is a flow where this person has never dealt with the organisation before, and what we want to do is give them a BPay reference number so that they can pay. Okay, so what you'll notice now is that you can pay, so that biller code came from the merchant facility. This one has been generated and is unique to this particular contact. Okay, so that's the code that they would use to pay. They go to their internet banking, they make the payment. Okay, now after that, what you need to do is, again, what's going to happen inside the system here is we're not going to give them a receipt until they actually hop onto internet banking and actually make that payment. Okay, so this one here is of BPay, and it's still at a status of awaiting payment. Now, the choices that you have here for marking this payment off is there's three options that you have. If you are using Easy Debit and their BPay side of things, the marking off of this would happen automatically. It happens once a day. We run a processor that says, with Easy Debit, who's paid on, who's made a payment, let's go and mark it off. So that's option one. Option two is sometimes you can get a file with all from your banking or your online system that you're using for your BPays, and that can have like a list of transactions that have been approved through BPay. So what you can do is you can use our import files module, and there's a whole lot of online documentation for this as well, and we can import those and mark everything off. So that's option two, import files and mass do it. Option three is basically you just come in here and you have a look at your list of those that are marked off, and you just come in here and go payment received. So that means it's come through the billing system, or through your online BPay account. Cool. One of the things that I forgot to mention is when I made this payment here, and this happens with all of our options, once I make the payment and actually press submit, it's generated the BPay CRN customer reference number, CRN number, and then that's also sent an email to the contact that has those details in it as well. So they don't have to remember their online screen, they should have got CC that. So inside Salesforce, that's very similar to every other part that we have. Where you have, you can find it under your email alerts and things like that. I'm just looking at the time here, so I've only got 5 more minutes. There's a couple other things I wanted to go through as well. So I'll move on so I can save a bit of time for some Q&As. What I've got here is I've got another merchant facility here that is called Stripe SCA, and before I go into that, so what I'm going to do is move on to some other methods of payment. This is Apple Pay, China Union Pay, etc. Payments to us, payment gateway comparison. What are the differences between the payment gateways? when you have a look at this page here, you'll get the payment gateways going across the top. You'll see the one I'm about to go into is Stripe SCA. So things like Apple Pay and Google Pay are available with Stripe SCA. They're also available with Windcave and Windcave Web Services and Windcave PX Pay as well. So it's dependent on the payment gateway as to whether you have Stripe. So what I'm doing here is I'm on Stripe SCA. If I click into that and go OK, now if I come back to my, online form, and it looks a little bit different. This time I'm just going to put my details in here. Cool. Now what you'll see here is I have Google Pay. On my merchant facility, I also enabled Apple Pay. Apple Pay won't work on your web browsers. It'll only work if you're on an Apple device. So we need to do that there. For Apple Pay and Google Pay, there is some other setups that you need to do within your Stripe account and also apply for within your Windcave account. So you can't just enable it and go. So have a look at the online guides for those setup instructions, what you need to do. But basically, when I choose, Google Pay here, that will come into here, and I just go next. There is some restrictions and things like that about how you use the Apple Pays and Google Pay. So I can choose Google Pay. When I'm on, web browser, it looks like this. You will notice here that even though you have your live credit card details set for Google Pay and Apple Pay, it doesn't actually charge your cards. So that's nice to know. You don't have to keep on testing live amounts, but it will still go through the same process and systems. Cool. We also mentioned these other payment methods that you might not have come across terribly often, things like China Union Pay. And as mentioned before, that's available only with Windcave at the moment. And don't forget to check out some of these, other, combinations of things that you can do here as well. Different payment types for different payment gateways. Cool. There's also some, European ones that are specific to things like payment gateways, like data trains, etc. Cool. Okay, it's pretty much come up to the that half hour. Vish, do you want to coordinate some of those questions? If there's anything that
I have mostly
haven't been answered, or
most of them are already answered. We have one more question from Morgan. That she still has issues with Apple and Google Pay.
and which account is that? Is that Windcave or?
They're using Windcave. Yeah.
So I know that Windcave themselves had a few little tweaks that they were working on a little while ago, and we did make some changes with our version 9.5. So to be it's quite possibly between the two of those. So 9.5, a couple of minor updates, and also I know that Windcave support also contacted me and sort of said that there'd been a few little glitches, but I think they'd sorted them out. So it's probably worthwhile giving that a try. The main thing with Google Pay and Apple Pay, particularly with Windcave, is you can't iframe them in. So they have to be standalone forms.
And then we have Michelle as well, who wants to know more about PayID, if you can talk about. Michelle, if you can let us know what particular section you want to talk about regarding PayID. Is it like generation or something?
So for PayID at the moment, our method is very similar to the manual methods. where we can't actually transact using PayID. So we send you the details on how to pay by PayID, and then you mark it off as payment received. So similar, like I say, similar to the check type process. We have had a couple of the payment gateways kind of contact us and sort of say, hey, we have PayID and things like that, and we'd love you guys to, to adopt it. That's been under consideration, but these things obviously take a little while to develop and cost to make them fully integrated. So it's a bit of a manual process, but it's under consideration for the future, and depending on the service provider that actually makes it technically possible.
And I have also shared a review link. If you have any suggestions or any future features that you would like to see with payments to us, please give us a short review, and we'll definitely try to take your suggestions and try to build payments to us to the next level.
Yeah, and a lot of the suggestions for webinars and things like that, please do send those through. We've got them, so you can do that. The best way to do that is through the Trailblazer community group. And if somebody has a particular angle, somebody makes a suggestion and somebody else has, that's great. But there's one particular area of that I'd love to hear more about, then please add it as a comment as well. Okay, and like I say, those thing that keeps us doing these webinars is those reviews. So we really do appreciate that as well. Cool. Like to try and keep on time. So is there anything else, Vish?
I think we answered all the queries. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, in that case, we'll wrap it up, and thank you all for attending, and hopefully we managed to cover off a lot of your questions. Awesome. Have a good afternoon.